Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is hacking. I spend a lot of time thinking about hacking. The real issue is how to protect ourselves and the things we love from being hacked. We need to look at hacking differently. Hacking actually means problem solving with a computer. In many ways, we see and think of it as an attack or a break-in by an aggressive party. It can also be trying to make things right. We need to remember that there are black hats and white hats when we talk about hacking. Those are the terms we use. Israel is a target for hackers 24/7. The game called cyber terror is a serious game. The stakes, like the electric grids and the water plants that supply the entire country, are enormously high. That's why it's essential to separate significant threats from hype, serious hackers from the amateurs. The most serious and significant threat of cyber terrorism today is perpetrated by groups and people whose success relies on their flying under the radar. It's composed of citizens, corporations, governments, one country attacking another country. Sometimes those countries, by the way, are sworn enemies. But just as often, they are allies, or at least, diplomatically speaking, friends. Israel's water system and electric systems each repel 35,000 attacks every single day. Many of these attacks are the work of amateur hackers, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. If hackers are attempting to attack Israel's utilities with such frequency, imagine how often Israel fends off attacks at their defense ministry, their foreign ministry, and even the prime minister's office. Many of the attacks against Israel emanate from China, from Russia, and from Iran. Many are young teenage hackers having fun and responding to dares, but some are from tech teams, serious players trying to make their mark, establishing their creds, and sell their skills to government agencies and private corporations. Not surprisingly, some of the private corporations and government agencies are also doing the hacking and sending out attacks. China, Russia, and Iran are notorious for attacking other governments, but so too are the governments of the United States, England, and yes, Israel. By virtue of the fact that they are protecting and defending their own systems, Western countries are also plotting attacks. The two go hand in hand, and it is a known secret that almost every Western country is hacking other Western countries. The largest amateur group of cyber terrorists is the anarchists. This group thrives on the hype they generate for perpetrating their activities. Anonymous is one of those anarchist groups, and it is most well known in that genre. They are loosely linked hackers who try to wreak havoc against people, corporations, and nations that they have determined to be evil. Anonymous has created an annual Hack Israel Day, aka Op Israel. It originally coincided with Holocaust Memorial Day when it began in 2013. This year, Anonymous celebrated their 4th annual Hack Israel Day on April 7th, 2016. This group is so warped in their perspective of good versus evil that they chose what they consider the perfect day to inflict the most pain and hurt on Israel. Get them while they're down, so to speak, on Holocaust Memorial Day. Think about it. Certainly, Holocaust remembrance is significant to the souls and the hearts of Israel and Jews worldwide, but it should also resonate with anarchists and touch a chord with all caring people. The message of Holocaust is as much a universal worldly message as it is a particularly Jewish message. In the last annual Israel hack, Anonymous leaked email addresses and bank accounts of private Israelis. Almost all that information had been leaked the previous year, not exactly creative. None of the info was essential, and nothing was a national secret. It was a nuisance hack. and not a very impressive one at that. Fewer and fewer hackers are participating in what is fast becoming a non-event each year. Now it serves more as a media hype in the hacking forums and security tech sites than as precedent-setting cyber warfare. Nowadays, Anonymous is living off its reputation. Once upon a time, they did some very destructive acts of cyber terror, but their luster is tarnishing and their panache is fading. Almost every cybersecurity person I ask, and that includes hackers, agree that Anonymous has become a low-level risk and a group with only amateurish skills. Their main style of attack is called a DOS, or a DDoS, a denial of service, during which they swamp a site with emails and overload the server, forcing it to shut down. That is hardly a threat to the world. Sometimes they succeed in diverting or hijacking users to alternative sites. Their best attack is posting a picture on the front page of a site, which is often not the site, but rather the new site that you were taken to after being hijacked. Yawn. This is very bad. There are serious threats out there, and there are amateurs. We need to keep them straight. The United States and Israel are cooperating on cybersecurity, especially as it refers to energy. U.S. Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz was in Israel recently. He said that the U.S. and Israel must coordinate and cooperate on energy issues even more than they have in the past because, quote, a very large fraction of cyber attacks involves the energy sector, and that's a recent experience. He went on to say that the United States must learn from Israel about cybersecurity, especially in protecting government operations and agencies. The visit was not without both some humor and some tension. Moniz was the point man for the nuclear deal. He was the main U.S. expert and the most important voice in the ear of the United States President Obama. Moniz was the voice that asserted that the deal was good. His counterpart in Israel, Yuval Steinitz, reminded Moniz of the issues that they were in deep conflict over last year. Moniz quipped back, laughing, that the Iranians chanting, quote, death to Israel, are matched by their calls for death to America. The United States and Israel signed 2 agreements about energy. The first agreement is about cooperation on issues related to natural gas, electricity, energy, and cybersecurity. The second agreement is to provide scholarships for Israeli postdocs to study and work at institutions in the United States that do energy-related work. Seems like a win-win for both nations. Coming up next, Points of View. Here's what some important voices have been talking about. First up is a column from the New York Times. This column was published on April 10, 2016, and is by Lara Friedman. Lara Friedman, a former United States Foreign Service officer, is the Director of Policy and Government Relations for Americans for Peace Now, which is affiliated with the Israeli organization Peace Now. Peace Now believes that Israel should do everything in its power to bring about a solution with the Palestinians. The column is entitled, Israel's Unsung Protector. Lara Friedman begins the essay, which is datelined Washington, D.C. With the Obama administration in its final year, several officials have said that the president has grown so frustrated with trying to revive Middle East peace talks that he may lay down his own outline for an Israeli-Palestinian two-state peace agreement in the form of a resolution to the United Nations Security Council. If that happens, count on 2 reactions. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will oppose it, and a chorus of American politicians and commentators will suggest that it would be unprecedented, even unthinkable, for an American president to support a Security Council resolution that Israel opposed rather than veto it. She continues and explains that an extreme reaction to this proposal erupted. The response was bipartisan, and one of the letters sent in opposition to this idea, warned that the United States must support Israel in the Security Council of the United Nations, that it is essential that the United States continue to block and veto Security Council resolutions that pressure Israel. Friedman continues, yet it flies in the face of truth. Over 7 years, Mr. Obama has not permitted passage of any Security Council resolution specifically critical of Israel. but a careful examination of the record shows that, since 1967, every other American president allowed or even had America vote for Security Council resolutions taking Israel to task for actions and policies toward the Palestinians and other Arab neighbors. During Lyndon B. Johnson's administration, the Security Council adopted at least 7 such resolutions. In Richard M. Nixon's, at least 15. In Gerald R. Ford's, 2. In Jimmy Carter's, 14. Friedman is correct, but she extends the argument saying that the U.S. should now constructively force Israel and the Palestinians into a solution. She writes, supporters of an Israeli-Palestinian peace, however, have reason to hope that Mr. Obama, having achieved nothing by shielding Israel, is now ready to embrace constructive Security Council action related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And now Lara Friedman concludes by saying that a two-state solution will not be an attack against Israel, and that President Obama and the Congress should push for that very goal. She writes, the two-state solution is the only path to preserving Israel's security and its character as a Jewish state and a democracy, while delivering freedom, dignity, and sovereignty to the Palestinians. We can hope that President Obama may now recognize that preserving the solution for the future is the most important legacy he can leave in this arena. But to accomplish that, he must be willing to resist, rather than court, the anti-peace bullies in Israel and the United States. He must be willing to stand up for American interests in obtaining a Middle East peace and to stand with America's allies in the Security Council in supporting a two-state solution. If he does that, President Obama will not be betraying Israel. He will be Israel's true friend. He will walk in the footsteps of all 8 other presidents since 1967, Democrat and Republican alike. This is a very important argument. It is very important for all of us to understand, even if you disagree with peace now, their motives are positive. They believe that pressure on Israel will permit/bring about a solution that will create a better Israel. It is very much the perspective of the White House. Second up is a column from a website called IsraeliCool.com. It's one of the most read English sites in Israel, and is certainly the most well-known. It was created by an Australian who goes by the pseudonym Ozzy David. This piece is written by Binyamin Arazi. Arazi is an East Coast artist, writer, and musician born to an Israeli-American mother and an Irish Catholic father. The piece is called On the Intersection of Nationality and Ethnicity. It was published on April 11th, 2016. The premise of the column is that Jews approach their Jewish identity from different points of view. But it's essential to unite, especially about Israel and its importance. Here's how he begins. Let's not mince words. Jewish identity has become a fragmented, incoherent mess. This conclusion can easily be reached just by probing it from an outsider's vantage point. But the fact of the matter is, not even we have been able to obtain a community-wide consensus on what it means to be a Jew. And that's not a good thing. Asking any large number of Jews about the meaning of Jewishness will inevitably produce many different answers. It's an ethnic group, a race, a religion, a code of ethics, a state of mind, the gamut. Our collective impotence at pinning down the core of our identity and communicating it effectively has generated immense confusion and has made Zionist advocacy incomparably harder than it would otherwise be. Jewish has become so entangled with the religious identity that failing to vigorously assert our status as Aboriginal Israelis, unfortunately Israelite, is an extremely antiquated term that doesn't translate very well to the 21st century, would leave us typecast as a religious faith, indigenous to whatever diaspora countries we most recently left behind, as opposed to Israel. Arazi is trying valiantly to bring every Jew under the umbrella of Jewish life. Here is how he concludes. Ultimately, it is imperative that we accept that historic Israel belongs to all of us. We are a nation. We are all Aboriginal Israelis, and we are all the same people. This is something that we can no longer afford to deny. Arazi is fighting the good fight. So many Jews are running away or just not interested in Judaism. We need to push ourselves and our leadership to embrace the largest concept of Jewish community and bring everyone under a unified banner. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. Recently, I've been developing themes in my cartoon selection. I think that can be helpful and fun and show the diversity of the points of view regarding topics. Today, I want to take all 4 cartoons that ran in Charlie Hebdo. All of us remember the horrific terror attack that targeted the offices of the satirical magazine. These were the cartoons that motivated the terrorists. When you see them, I'm certain of 2 things. First, you will laugh because they are very funny. And second, that you will not understand how these cartoons could have been so offensive to cause people to mass murder. And that every day in the United States, cartoonists draw cartoons just like these. This first cartoon is of a terrorist who just got out of the shower. He's in a towel and is getting dressed. His wife is at the ironing board, and he asks his wife, "Honey, have you seen my suicide vest?" She was ironing it, and it blew up right there. As I said in the intro, this is hilarious. The second cartoon portrays a Muslim pointing at a romantic couple, a man and a woman sitting on a park bench. He says to his family of 4, pointing at the romantic couple, "This is immoral. This is against Islam." All the while, trailing behind him and his family is a sex slave. That's what's written in the cartoon itself. This cartoon points out the inconsistency of certain thoughts and actions. The third cartoon has 2 women looking at a school class graduation photo. The women looking at the photo are dressed in black and covered from head to toe, including their heads. The women in the photo are dressed exactly the same way. Only a tiny slit for their eyes can be seen. The woman holding the picture points at someone in the back row and says, "That's me, there." Of course, this is funny. There is no way to distinguish anyone from any of the others in the photo itself. That's what makes it so funny. The final cartoon portrays a husband and a wife. They're in the bathroom. The man looks at the shower curtain and tells the curtain, "You look beautiful today." His wife is actually standing on the other side of him, and she says, I'm over here." The confusion is hilarious. Now, obviously, these cartoons are not respectful, but they do not really push the envelope either. Very few cartoons in political humor are respectful. In general, that's the nature of the genre. But unless everything having to do with Islam and Muslims is out of bounds, there should be no reason not to draw cartoons. And these seem pretty tame. In a moment, my own perspective and a few predictions. The Palestinian Authority Security Agency, the ISA, arrested 3 terrorists from Hebron recently. The combination of this announcement and these arrests are intended to signal a renewed sense of cooperation between the PA and Israel. The PA has been under tremendous pressure to step up and try to stop the wave of terror attacks against Israelis that have been commonplace for such a long time now, for 6 months, and even supported by the PA leadership. This arrest came with a further announcement explaining that the PA security services have actually prevented 200 attacks and arrested 100 people and confiscated numerous weapons. It's not clear that this is a new era of cooperation, but it is certainly an important symbol. Hamas responded by condemning the arrests and called the PA and its security forces and its leadership collaborators. Israel responded to the ISA announcement, saying that, indeed, as of late, there has been a huge drop in terror attacks. The Prime Minister is being cautiously optimistic about this. But regardless, this is a very good sign, even if it is only temporary. Also, Israel destroyed a memorial garden recently in Jerusalem. The garden was a memorial to 47 terrorists killed in the act of terrorism. The garden was the undertaking of local Palestinians. A tree had been planted for each terrorist, and a large placard-sized picture of each terrorist was placed in the garden. The garden was located in the community of Ras El Amud, also known as Ma'aleh HaZeitim, which abuts the cemetery of the Mount of Olives. The garden was on Jerusalem public property. The Jerusalem police and the Israeli army uprooted the trees and destroyed the pictures. There is no doubt that Israel was 100% correct in tearing down the memorial that glorified acts of terror and the men and women who perpetrated terror. There is no way that Jerusalem could sanction these actions and attitudes. The biggest issue is that the Palestinians do honor the terrorists. They build memorials for terrorists, name stadiums after terrorists, set up as role models and heroes these terrorists. That is not the Israeli way. The recent Egyptian-Saudi Arabian agreement resolving a maritime border dispute that has lasted since 1906 is causing some worry in Israel. This agreement will have huge implications for the safety of Israel and its shipping trade. Here's a quick history and a geography lesson. In 1906, the Ottomans and the British demarcated two islands, Tiran and Sanafir, which we refer to now as simply the Straits of Tiran, to be under the control of Egypt. In 1967, Egypt closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli ships. The Straits of Tiran are at the mouth of the Gulf of Aqaba, which leads right up to Eilat, one of Israel's largest seaports. The straits between Egypt on the west and Saudi Arabia on the east. When Egypt shut the straits, they were committing an act of war. That act of war precipitated the strike which, after escalating, is now called the Six-Day War, or the 1967 war. Saudi Arabia entrusted the Straits of Tiran to Egypt in 1950. It became part of a larger plan to cripple Israel, and in 1967, the Arab League supported their closure. Closing the straits was one of the main reasons for the 67 war. There's no doubt about it. After the Six-Day War, Israel took charge of the islands, aka the straits, to ensure free movement for Israeli shipping. After the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt, Israel returned the straits to Egypt. Now that the islands and the straits are in the hands of Saudi Arabia, the obvious question arises: will the status quo continue? At this point, I'm almost certain that the status quo will continue as is. BDS has been pressuring musicians not to come to Israel. Even more horrific is the pressure BDS applies to force musicians who have already scheduled concerts in Israel to cancel their trips. And yet, despite the pressure, this summer's music schedule in Israel is very impressive. Here's just a short list. Julio Iglesias on May 7th, Deep Purple May 22nd, Michael Jackson's Thriller will be performed May 19th to 24th. Elton John, May 26th. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, June 8th. Alice Cooper, June 16th. Duran Duran is coming in June. Bruce Springsteen's coming in July. Beyonce, August 3rd. Dire Straits will be in Israel in September. On March 1st, we missed that, Pat Boone performed in Israel. This is simply a partial list of names on the list, and their performers are actually known. Groups like Die Antwoord, Symphony X, and Real Estate are also coming to Israel. I assume that these groups are very popular because the price of their tickets is enormous and the venue is extremely precious. But the biggest musician who will visit Israel over the summer is Barry Manilow. He's scheduled to give two concerts, one on June 30th and the second on July 1st. The beat goes on despite BDS. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Did you know that the huge mainframe computer in Rehovot at the Weizmann Center was called the Golem? That was one of the most powerful computers in the world. The Golem was the perfect name. That was the name of the man-made creature created by the Maharal of Prague, Rabbi Lowy, in his study in the Altneu Shul in the Jewish ghetto in Prague. The Golem was created in order to protect Jews from the medieval Jew hatred, especially blood libels. The Golem, the computer in Rehovot, was an Israeli secret weapon. Today, the computer and computer tech is still one of Israel's secret weapons. It, together with human capital, Israeli ingenuity and creativity, puts Israel on the cutting edge of technology and defense. The sheer numbers are shocking. 77% of Israelis are on broadband. 140 scientists, technicians, and engineers to every 10,000 people in Israel. That's the highest in the world. In the United States, for instance, it's only 83 to 10,000. In Japan, it's 82 to 10,000. This is really something to be proud of. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.